Hello, everyone, and welcome to LDM Radio Sports Talk, the show that talks about sports and other topics relatable to sports fans. Joining me today from a remote location in New Jersey is my co-host, Rowdy Jod.
Hey, how's it going, man?
All right, feeling great. So, we had some technical difficulties because of the bad weather yesterday, but we're good to go and clicking on all cylinders. We're going to start today with the interesting debate across America and really the nation. But as far as the sports world is concerned, we have the COVID vaccine mandate that is going into effect seemingly this coming season, or for Major League Baseball, they're already in season, but for the other sports, is going to be at the start of their seasons. Right now, it looks like every venue is going to require that all fans, workers, everybody in attendance is COVID vaccinated. And one interesting wrinkle is the NBA was talking about the possibility of both New York teams and the San Francisco team, which is the Golden State Warriors, having to have the players vaccinated, and the players that are not vaccinated are going to have to sit out for those games. So what are your thoughts on all these developments as they stand right now?
Yeah, man. I think the league is really concerned about their revenue, and the two biggest things that's going to hurt their revenue is players having COVID, so like big players missing key games, and games that have to get canceled because of an outbreak. And so I think all the precautions they're taking, both for players and fans, is the right way to go, both for the league and for society itself.
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it from an attendance point of view, because you want people to feel safe so that they come to the venues. That's one angle of it. And the other one is the fact that it could also turn into, with not having the COVID vaccinations, it might hurt attendance too. Like, it might not hurt for the bigger markets like New York, Chicago, those places, like they could pretty much fill up a building no matter what, really. Is just like, all right, so these set of people are not going to come, so we'll just fill them up with more people. It's almost like a waiting list when it comes to tickets and all that. But then you look at the smaller markets for all sports. You look at, like in baseball, maybe, your Kansas Cities and your Arizonas, and, you look at these places like that, and, it's going to hurt because they're not able to attend, even if they are willing to attend. So it's a very sticky situation. I think with everything else that the COVID-19 pandemic has, and the fallout of it has transpired so far, everything's unprecedented times. I think everybody's just trying to cover themselves and try to do the best of the situation. It's always going to be a situation where it's going to hurt one side but help another, and everybody's just trying to do the best they can for everyone, or I guess the majority of everybody else. What do you have any other thoughts on this situation as it's unfolding? Judd? All right, we lost John for a little bit, but do you have your mic on? We can't. All right. Okay.
You can hear me now?
Yeah. Now we can hear you now.
That's weird. Skype muted me. Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see from the players' perspective. Obviously, it's a hot button issue. A lot of players have been very outspoken for it, like Cole Beasley for the Buffalo Bills. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting season, especially when you're looking at how strict the protocols are going to be on sort of big games. How much of a scare does it have to be before you take out, a player like Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin from a big game or a playoff game, or if they do outdoor games, that kind of stuff. So it'll be an interesting year.
Yeah, so the angle I was looking at was more of the fan perspective, because that's pretty much where it's most effective because you have people on top of people, and if one guy coughs in one section, I mean it could take out or it could spread to theoretically the whole section or at least whatever is in front of the person coughing or sneezing. When it comes to the players, it's almost like a whole nother world. Because imagine, let's say a situation. I don't know if let's say like a Julius Randle or R.J. Barrett or Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. I don't know, whether they're vaccinated or not. I don't know what their stances are on it. Just completely hypothetical. But imagine if they're not vaccinated and they can't even play in their own home games. That's knocking them
Yeah.
out for, like potentially big losses because you play like 41 home games in your building. So I mean it's a very very tough situation for everybody involved, and hopefully everybody just makes the best decisions. So it's really it's tough really to say who's right or who's wrong because the the answer is like whoever if you if they end up being wrong in a certain situation, the fallout could be tremendous. Like it's just it's really really tough out there in this situation. But it's interesting to talk about. It's interesting to think about. I know there's a lot of people who aren't able to go into like other venues like gyms and stuff, and they're staying away from the gyms. And unfortunately, if you're a really passionate fan, you want to go watch your team and you have the funds and your the ability to go watch the games and you're not able to attend, that's gotta hurt as well.
For sure.
All right, so we're gonna move on to there was a big development with the New York Mets this past week where Javier Baez was um, he ended up having a home run in a game. After the game, he admitted that it was to boo the fans who were booing the Mets during their long losing streak. What are your thoughts on how that all went down?
Look, I mean, good for the players, right? I mean, the players take a lot of abuse from fans all the time. If you ever watch a show, The League, they've had those moments. I think there was the episode with Antonio Gates where all the fans are yelling at him for playing bad for fantasy, and he's like, "Look, this is my livelihood. Like I'm playing like real for real money and real stakes, and you're talking about some fantasy." And I think the same thing. I think it's good for the players. I think it amps them to want to show the fans that are booing them that they're wrong. And I think they're perfectly in their right. Like I don't think there's anything that you can do or say to tell a player no. This is how you're supposed to play the game if fans are booing you. I mean, I like the individuality.
That's an interesting take. I'd have to. I disagree. I think that no matter what the situation, you kind of have to just ignore it and just go about your business. Like what one thing where New York stands is like New York wants a winner, especially the New York Mets fan base. Who's been deprived for so long. They're pretty much on that level of desperation when it comes to good times and wanting winners and success. And I don't agree personally with the booing aspect. I'm not a person who likes to boo my own teams, whether they're doing bad or doing good. I understand the perspective. I'm not, I don't think it's really wrong either way. You just, but people are gonna be people, and if you're not performing the way you're supposed to be performing with the expectation level and or the price tag that comes with it, you're gonna hear about it. And one of the excerpts that people tossed around in social media and such like that was a quote from Derek Jeter. To paraphrase him, he was saying in 2004 he ended up going through a stretch where his batting average at one point was .190 .197, and he said that if he was in the stands that he'd be booing himself too, and that he has to do better, and he understood that he had to do better. Eventually he did, but I think it's just I think it's just it comes with the territory with performing in front of big audiences and in rough places such like New York and in a tough deprived fan base like the New York Mets are. Um,
Let me ask you this. You have two scenarios, right? Imagine you as a fan who booed the team. Scenario A, your player, is very humble about it, says he's playing bad, he's going to do better, doesn't do better. Scenario B, your player gets really angry and like his inner competitiveness comes out. He scores a home run and, he's booing you back. Which scenario as a fan would you rather have of those two?
well, I'll take the booing back.
Right? Because you want the score, right?
Right.
So, to each player, if it motivates them, it motivates them. If it's Kobe or Michael Jordan, they might not even acknowledge it. Like if you went to Kobe in a press conference and you said people are booing you, he might just say, "What people?" They're like, "Oh, there are people in the stands. I didn't even notice. I'm focused on the game." Right?
Right.
But everyone's got a different reaction. But what fans care about is what put points on the board, and he put points on the board. So what he does,
Absolutely, and we'll get to what the fallout is, what ended up happening after this initially happened. But I think like the initial fan reaction was tough, especially like what with the Mets and their fans having such a rough go of it the past couple of decades, and only like glimmers of excitable moments, overall, when they win games here and there, but, so many like losing season after losing season, laughing stock and, all these other like the Bernie Madoff thing. I mean, it's just all types of unfortunate circumstances that have hit the team. And you're in a situation where you don't want any more drama, and then you get this drama. And then, for this was between reportedly Javier Baez, Francisco Lindor, and Kevin Pillar. So when you look at those three players, we'll just look at Javier Baez, who has just been in New York for a month. He hasn't even been there for the whole season, let alone multiple seasons. So he's gotten there. He's supposed to have like a best friend relationship with Francisco Lindor. Now Francisco Lindor is the most disappointing because you have him for lockdown for 10 years at like over $300 million, for the whole contract. So, I mean, there's, Javier Baez, he might be just a rental because he's a free agent at the end of the year, but you also gave up a top prospect to acquire him. So there was a risk involved there, which might just turn into a rental, which would be overall disappointing since the Mets have lost 10 games in the standings since he's been there at the time of the incident. And but Francisco Lindor, you have him locked down. Nobody's going to trade for over 9 years and $200 million contract. It's just not going to happen. So it's I think it's a bad precedent for all around. And it's just it's a completely unfortunate situation, especially one that possibly could linger on, even though the general manager Sandy Alderson has come out and publicly said like there shouldn't be anything toward the fans basically, and then the Javier Baez and everybody, they said all the PR stuff the right way, but people feel the way they feel, and there's no magical light switch that taught him a lesson to not feel this way. Even though they could say all the right things with the PR light, but let's face it, they feel the way they feel and they act the way they act, and that's how it's gonna go down. So in this situation, we have since then they've actually won 3 games in a row. They've gained 2 games on the Atlanta Braves, and now they're 5 games back from the top spot. So there could be some positivities from here. There could be some rally cries, but really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just if you perform, then you don't have any issues. If you don't perform, then you're gonna hear about it. That's the way it's gonna go when it's in front of a larger group of people. Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, no, I think that's fairly on point. I mean, everyone has their own sort of mechanics and their own tips and tricks to get the best performance with whether it's crowd or no crowd. I mean, you've heard NBA players talk about how the bubble felt without the energy from the crowd. LeBron had talked about it. Others had talked about it. So I think when the time comes, everyone has to do what they need to do to adapt to the situation.
Yeah, I've sat here show after shows, praising the Mets for the moves that they've made, and when the certain moves didn't work out, it was just basically like there's still like a bright light for the future. Uh, Down the road there still is, but this is pretty bad. Like it pretty much makes this season not as successful as I pictured it being, even from a building block standpoint, because you have, like the one of the ringleaders of these actions is Francisco Lindor. He's going to be there for the next 9 years after this at like $270 million overall. So, it's are they going to be as attractive to free agents now, moving forward? Are they going to be able to get the big fish? Are they going to be able to change the culture into a winning culture? It's just those are all questions that are looming now larger more than ever. All right, so we're gonna break into we're gonna cross the Major League Baseball, just the pennant races. We're gonna go through just to highlight how everything's going. There's been some separation between the contenders and pretenders this week. There's about 30 games left in the season. We're in the last month. We're in September, so October baseball is just around the corner, and that's the races are really heating up. So this week the Tampa Bay Rays, they've been able to put 9 wins in a row together, so they're the new hottest team in baseball, and at exactly the right time because the Yankees were clipping at their heels during their own 13-game winning streak. The Yankees actually lost 4 games in a row over the past week, so right now we're sitting at the Tampa Bay Rays are 7 games ahead of the Yankees, and the Red Sox are 9 games behind leading Tampa Bay Rays. Then we have the AL Central, which is not going to change at all. The White Sox are 10 games up on the Cleveland Indians, so there's going to be no theatrics there. And in the AL West, the Houston Astros are 5 games ahead of the Oakland A's now, with Seattle emerging as a anything can happen contender, 6.5 games back of the Houston Astros. As far as the wild card goes, the Yankees still hold the wild card spot, the top wild card spot, which is going to be the home game for the wild card race, the one wild card play-in game. So the Yankees are ahead in that race. They are 2 games up on the Boston Red Sox. Boston Red Sox officially hold the last wild card spot, and the A's are 2 games back of the Red Sox. The Seattle is 3.5 games back of the Red Sox, so they're a lot closer to the wild card. So they're making a big push here as the season winds down. Toronto is 4.5 games back, and the Indians are 7.5 games back of the Red Sox. So realistically, we're looking at 3 teams, possibly 4 teams going in for those last 2 spots. Any thoughts on the wild AL races, Judd?
Yeah, so I think with the AL East, it's not as tight as some of the other races you have in the NL. Obviously the Dodgers, Giants, Braves, Phillies. It seems like I'm not seeing much of a shakeup. I think we know who's going to come out on top of all the divisions. Maybe with the AL West, you might have some challenge to the Astros, but it seems like we're now just talking about who's going to be on the cusp of making it in. And so it's definitely getting to that time of the season where you're sort of looking at, starting teams are focused on the playoffs, and there are still other teams that are clawing in.
Yeah, they say it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But right now, the interesting part of the AL East was the Yankees went through. They had their 13-game winning streak, and they only gained a game and a half through that whole 2-week span. And the Rays have just been consistently good. They had a bunch of games with Baltimore. They finished the regular season against Baltimore at 18-1. So you take care of the teams that you have to take care of, and then you take your chances with the with the higher teams, you go pretty much about 500 or 600 or so, and then you're a playoff team. So they're taking care of business on that end. It looks like the best the locally what the best the Yankees could do is be the wild card team and have that actual game in New York, which would be a huge difference because any team that plays on the home at home instead of the road, and the Yankees, they tailor their pitching, they tailor their whole lineup to play in Yankee Stadium, so it would be a huge advantage there, but definitely not a layup. Then me personally, I would love to see what a Yankees Red Sox playing game would be because that would just be epic. um, but you have the Oakland A's, you have Seattle. They're making big pushes toward the end of the season. Well, the A's were in great position for a while there, and then they ended up stumbling down a little bit. While Seattle's been surging the past couple weeks, so we'll see how everything goes there. But definitely very interesting as we head to as we dip into the last month of the season. Now in the NL, we have the Braves, who are still on top of the NL East, which can also be the NL least, kind of like the NFL. The same kind of dynamic over here. We have the Braves are 2 games up on the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Braves are stumbling a little bit toward the end. They ended up getting swept in a 2-game series by the Yankees, and then they ended up getting swept by the Dodgers. So it's been a tough week for them. And the New York Mets, as we spoke about earlier, they're 5 games back. They were back at this point last week. So still in the anything can happen realm of the world, they do have a chance to scratch into the playoffs. Their best shot would be through the NL East, of course, because the wild card, we'll get to that in a minute, but the wild card is this it's a really distance race over there. So in the NL Central, much like the AL Central, you have the Milwaukee Brewers, who are 10.5 games up on the Reds, so there's going to be no drama there. Definitely making it into the playoffs and taking that division. Then the NL West, for the first time in a couple weeks, the Los Angeles Dodgers have reclaimed the top spot over the San Francisco Giants. They are half game up with the Giants, and the Padres are 14 games back. So there's going to be no drama there. It's pretty much a 2-team race, but it's not the 2 teams that we expected heading into the season. Instead of being a battle between the Dodgers and the Padres, it's a battle between the Giants and the Dodgers, which is definitely the biggest surprise of the year. Now in the wild card race, so for the home game, the Giants are 13 games up on the second wild card spot leader, Cincinnati Reds. So there's a guarantee that whoever finishes second between the Dodgers and the Giants, that's where the home game is going to be for the NL wild card game. And right now the Cincinnati Reds are holding on to a half-game lead on the San Diego Padres, so their season is not a complete waste yet. Then the Phillies are 2.5 games back. The St. Louis Cardinals are 2.5 games back, and the New York Mets are 5.5 games back. Any thoughts on the NL wild card, the NL races?
Yeah, I'm more excited right now to see. We've talked about this. I have a little soft spot for the Dodgers. I associate them with the Capitals of baseball, and so I'm really excited to see if they're going to come out on top and hopefully go pretty far. So that's the race that I'm really looking at right now, is the Dodgers Giants.
Absolutely. I mean, these are actual barn burner races. Like, these are actual races where one day is one team, the next day could be a different team. It seems a little more clear cut in the AL, but what we do have here is one less spot of up for grabs. I think with the wild card being so far between the Giants or the Giants or the Dodgers, whoever ends up finishing second. So it's a shorter list because now you have 5 teams going for one spot as far as like second place goes. So it'll be interesting to see how everything else shakes down there. The Atlanta Braves definitely have to get it together if they want to stay in the playoff hunt. And that was everybody's I think that was mostly everybody's preseason pick when it comes to baseball coming out of the NL East. We didn't think it would be that feeble all around, but we thought at least the Braves will be a very hot commodity there. But well, we'll see how everything goes. We got a month to go, and again, September baseball is a lot of teams that they play intra-division, so that's where you can make up a lot of ground. I know the Yankees and the Rays, they play each other 3 times, and it's just the way the schedule is built. Pretty much the first month of the season and the last month of the season, you play a lot of divisional games, and then they sprinkle in the intra-division, intra-conference games throughout the year. But so there's going to be a lot of people jumping over other people, and being able to catch them easier because they're playing head-to-head. All right, so we're going to jump into the NHL now. So there was a fairly busy week in the NHL for an off season. We had the Jasper Kotkaniemi situation. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the background of this for that I think a lot of people have understood, but just for people who may just be tuning in, back 2 seasons ago, I believe, Sebastian Aho was going up for his post entry level contract, and there was a stall between him and the Canes management on how much his contract was going to be. Montreal decided, okay, we're going to offer sheet Sebastian Aho. And what an offer sheet is essentially when a player is still on their restricted free agent contract, which they are for their first until they hit age 27, or on their 4th contract, whichever comes first. If you want to sign that player, you have control over their rights, meaning that you're the first person to negotiate with them, that you can match any offer another team puts during the qualifying stage. And if you extend them a qualifying offer, which is the same price they made before or higher, you can maintain their rights. So the way this has been set up is because the league doesn't want people poaching players, right? So on top of that, there's also penalties if you try to use this to poach a player. For example, you'll get compensation. So we've seen this very rarely in the NHL. Scott Stevens has been offer sheeted, I think, twice successfully. But in the modern day, we haven't seen a successful offer sheet because the compensation picks are so high. For example, I think, if a player like McDavid was going to get offer sheeted, you have to give the other team 4 first-round picks and pay the player more than they're willing to pay them. So anyways, the Canes had new management, and Montreal thought that the new manager would be stingy, and so they offered Sebastian Aho the 5-year, $8.5 million deal, which was easily a no-brainer for Carolina to match. What Montreal thought was, okay, we'll rate it with tons of signing bonuses, meaning that Carolina was going to have to fork over like $21 or $29 million in the first 3 years to Sebastian Aho, and hoping that no owner wants to put that money out of his pocket. Well, everyone else thought this was a blessing for Carolina, right? Because Sebastian Aho signed it, Carolina matched it basically instantaneously, and it was great because then the deal was very, very team friendly. I mean, $8.5 million for a player of Sebastian Aho's talent when he should be making 10 was great. So fast forward to today, we have the Kotkaniemi offer sheet. So the Hurricanes, wanting to get back at Montreal, decide to offer sheet Jesper Kotkaniemi, who has been a very puzzling and polarizing player in Montreal, right? He was drafted with the 3rd overall pick. He is a player who killed it in the AHL, finally got his job in the NHL, is actually one of the youngest players to have as many playoff goals as he does, to have 9 playoff goals before his age of 20, up there on a list with guys like Gretzky, Lemieux, etc. And yeah, he was a guy who was scratched in the Stanley Cup Finals after having 5 goals. It was insane. And so there's been a lot of bad blood there, and Carolina decides, okay, let's go back and let's screw with Montreal. So first, they offer him a 1-year, $6.1 million deal, which is going to be really tough for Montreal to match because they're up against the cap. And then 2, they give him well, it's actually 6.1 million and $15, 15 to represent Kakanyemi's number, and they offer him a $20 signing bonus, not 20,000, not 20 million, $20 because that's Sebastian Aho's number to make Montreal know we're doing this because you tried to screw with us. And it's great. I think Montreal is really in a pickle. A lot of people are saying that even though Kakanyemi isn't a $6.1 million player now, Carolina actually has a long-term extended deal with him because he can sign for less once his rights are transferred over to Carolina. So a lot of people are thinking, he'll play there for 1 year in the middle of the contract. If he's not playing very well, he'll take the long-term extension, which is looking at about $3 to $4 million. Rumor has it that Carolina has been after Kakanyemi for a while, that they've offered Montreal to take him off their hands, and Montreal said no, and that the price they were willing to pay was higher than the first round and third round pick compensation. And so when Montreal said no to like a higher price, they're like, well, we're just going to offer sheet you for a lower compensation and put you in a bind. So it's really a brilliant move, and the payback makes it super juicy.
Yeah, it's a totally it's crazy how all that situation unfolded. I think with the loss of Philip Dandino going to the Los Angeles Kings, this really can hamper what Montreal is able to do. And I don't believe that because Shea Weber is suspected to miss the entire season and possibly uh, have to retire, but that is the retirement part hasn't officially happened yet, but there's been talk that he'll be out for the year, so his money will go into long-term injury reserve, and that's possible to help him with the contract. But definitely, I mean, this is a pickle for him. I don't think they're able to really lose a player like Kotkaniemi, even though he is kind of like wishy-washy when it comes to consistency. But then again, like who's going to be the number two center? Who's is going to fully like from a team that was in the Stanley Cup Finals that had like a depth at the center position. Now they're risking losing two of the four of them. Well, actually, two of the because I don't think Eric Stahl re-signed with them. So you're basically risking losing two or three of those centers. That's a pretty big jump at that point. So there's still a couple of days to go whether Montreal decides to match or not. But I do like the fact that there is compensation. Not every sport has a compensation. It kind of equates to like a sign and trade, where that's more of a NBA thing where like a player signs with another team, but they just like they forward the rights just so that they can get like the bigger contract for being the team that hosts the rights instead of the one who's just acquiring them as a free agent. So either way it works out, it might help Montreal in the long run because let's say Kotkaniemi doesn't live up to the potential that he has being a third round pick in the 2018 draft. It's very interesting situation. It'd be interesting to see what Montreal actually does.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a first and third round pick isn't too much for Kotkaniemi, right? I mean, he's a great player who shows flashes of brilliance. People forget he's 20 years old, right? This is a player who could potentially become really, really great. He's a former third overall pick. What's Carolina's first round pick going to be? A 20th pick maybe, even if they miss the playoffs, like 13th, 12th, 11th. I'm sure it'll be lottery protected. You're not going to get a player of that caliber on the market for a first and third round pick. What's sticky for Montreal is not only would they have to make moves this year to keep Kotkaniemi, he's clearly saying he doesn't want to necessarily play there. He signed that offer sheet with the intent to play at Carolina because it wasn't an offer sheet that's going to match, right? Sebastian Aho signed with Montreal, but he knew that Carolina was going to match it because it was matchable. Kotkaniemi signed an offer that's really, really tough for Montreal to match, and you don't do that if you still want to play with that team, right?
I'd have to disagree. I think players look out in the offer sheet situation. They look out for themselves. They decide afterward because you look. Every time you hear offer sheet or any kind of situation like this, for especially for a Ranger fan. You think back to signing the off season of many years ago, where Joe Sakic signed with the Rangers. The Colorado Avalanche had 7 days or he would be lost to the Rangers. They waited until the seventh day. I think they had to like move around some things financially with I think they like sold a show or something like that. It was some kind of backstory where it was a last minute thing that transpired so that they were able to match the offer Sakic, and then the rest is history because uh, the Rangers were lost without a center, which they and Colorado Avalanche were able to keep their Hall of Fame, their eventual Hall of Fame center. Um, in that situation, I don't think Joe Sakic really cared whether the Avalanche were going to match it or not. But it was like great that they matched it. But it was also going to be great if they didn't match it. I don't know. I think a lot of
Yeah,
times.
what I'm saying is if he wanted to stay in Colorado and the Rangers wouldn't have signed the offer sheet, right? You've seen this in the past. That's why a lot of teams don't do offer sheets, because they reach out to the player and the player says we're not in it, and they don't want to look horrible by offer sheeting a player who doesn't sign it, right? It takes both parties to consent. And I think in Sebastian Aho's case, it was clear that he knew by signing that contract, that's going to be the contract he's going to Carolina. Kotkaniemi has been very upset with Montreal. It's basically, the Bergevin and said they're not even playing the top six. I mean, this is a guy who he's signing something with the intent to leave. And I think what makes that difficult is if Montreal does retain him, they have to pay him at least $6.1 million from here on out moving forward, right? And so, because he's not going to sign for less than that. 6.1 is if it's a place where he wants to be. If it's Montreal, I don't see them signing him for $4 million the way Carolina would say, look, we're not going to tender you at 6.1. No other team's tendering you. Let's cut something earlier. I think he'll just take his free agency and leave. And so I think that's the scariest part for Montreal is not just the compensation for this match. We're committed to this player long term, forever, basically.
Or even if you trade him, like let's say you trade him at the deadline, are you getting a third in the middle of the season from a desperate team that really needs a center and would be able to acquire his rights? That'd be interesting. That would be another wrinkle there too. Maybe not, unless he's like really on fire for the whole season.
Yeah, no, it's tough. So I don't know what Montreal is going to do. It's definitely the most interesting offer sheet we have had in the modern era by far.
Absolutely, I think it's exciting. There's been there's been a long time since the offer sheet has been an NHL thing. So it's pretty cool that there's some kind of storylines and barbs going back and forth. Especially, I mean, they're not even division rivals. They're like they're same conference, but like different divisions. So it'll make their 3 meetings up this upcoming season real juicy.
Yeah, it'll be exciting.
So in local news, the quote unquote not exciting Islanders have had a not exciting offseason exactly, but they have shored up what works for them. They have a very strong defensive front and goaltending, and they get enough scoring to get by up until 2 Eastern Conference Finals appearances of the past 2 years. And they had a really interesting week where they locked down Kyle Palmieri and what I think was a very, very friendly, team-friendly deal from Casey Zizekas to shore up the best fourth line in hockey at the center position. And then Anthony Beauvillier, and then they ended up signing Zach Parise to a cheap deal, comparatively a cheap deal, to help out there. And so, what do you think about what the Islanders have done and how they're moving forward by not changing much?
Yeah, I think that's Lou's way of saying that he thinks the Islanders can win and that they can win now, and he's taking on some of these contracts that aren't going to look great in a few years. I mean, the Kyle Palmieri one is a contract that I laugh about because I feel like if any other team signed a player of that caliber for that price, Islanders fans would mock them forever, and then Islanders fans rejoice with Kyle Palmieri. So I think this is Lou's general